My first question was what limitations you had to overcome in raising your children. You had 10 children, so you must have experienced some limitations.
Well, my limitations were that lack of knowledge of looking after babies, and in the first place when they came, and I learned just by doing, and the lack of experience with babies and with children, and so, and God provided. That's the other question. How did God provide? And it was through Him, was just because the Bible has written, God has written in His Word certain things about bringing up children, raising children, and so that was most of it through prayer and through Christian friends. Christian friends were all around me now, when I got married, that I'd never met before, and they were more than willing to share things with me. And just overcoming the things that came up by committing them to the Lord. I think that's just everything. Like, is that enough on that one?
The next question was, your goal in training them was that they would be, oh yeah, I asked you what specific goals you had in training your children. If you actually sat down and thought some out.
Well, yeah, Bill and I did. He would want to pray for each one when they were coming, and that was our main goal, that they might know the Lord and grow up to love and serve Him, even to the point of being missionaries wherever the Lord might call them. That was what we prayed when our children started coming. We had the same goals. Our prayers were for that. I guess we could have, there was times when we should have prayed, how will we do this, Lord, together, and so that we would agree on that. And I was not very I guess I never was very communicative, and I could have been more communicative, I guess, with my thoughts and desires. But I thought they were the same as Bill's, same as my husband's desires.
That makes me wonder, how did you arrive at having the same goals? You worked that through afterwards?
It was very, no, I hadn't spoke that Bill gave me, and I read it, and I agreed with everything that was in there. It wasn't hard for me to be, the way I grew up was being submissive to my elders and my dad. So I never had to do anything about making decisions.
It wasn't a big change for you to
No.
switch from being obedient to your father and okay.
And where were we? Oh, again, to bring them up in the nurture, and that was our goal. Nurture and admonition of the Lord, that was what was in God's Word to do. Our tools were God's Word, again, prayer, that His Spirit would convict them of sin and righteousness and judgment to come. As soon as you were really very small, I was teaching Bible to memorize verses,
I remember that.
and Lydia too, and many verses in John, and to sing songs.
I'm just, so you would say that was how you used the tool of God's Word, was to have us memorize it and to teach it to us
Yeah,
and expect it to do what
what
it was supposed to do.
Mm.
Do you think we did? When you were doing
Well,
that?
yeah, you did. You were obedient to, like when you were small.
When you were little, we were.
Yeah, and had many. When we go to BC and places like that, we would go into to eat in a restaurant, and they always said how wonderfully well you behaved, and you didn't make a big fuss over what you should eat, because you'd never been to him.
Yeah, we didn't go very often. I remember the first time going into a restaurant and thinking, wow, and then they served us powdered milk. And I thought, powdered milk? I thought this was supposed to be, yeah, it was in BC. Okay, now let's go to the next one.
What did you do in your spare time?
In your spare time, which you said you didn't have any.
I did.
But I figure everybody has spare moments. And it's how you manage those spare moments. And everybody, even with little kids, has time. On the toilet even, we have bath time and we have think time. So that's why I wondered what you did with those times.
Probably had quite a bit of time when our first one came. But then Bill was needing me to help, whatever. That first year I was sick most of the first 3 months. So that
In the pregnancy.
would you call that spare
Rest
time?
time? That's debatable. Okay. What do you have there? You used the rest time that you had to rest. That's what I noticed, is that when mothers have a time, they don't use it to their best advantage, even just to take rest when their kids are resting.
I always
Work
did.
when they're working and rest when they're resting.
I probably tuckered out by that time because it was still. This is when I had 4 or 5 of you young, the ones that were born in the 50s, and Dan and Celia. I guess that would be the ones. But then all of the different places we went during that time. You'd have to ask me, definitely. You wouldn't be aware, not likely. I don't know what you thought about where we were living. You weren't down to West Hawk Lake, but just had John and Louise and John at that time. But where was it that when you were 3 or 4? We would be home in the old brown house. And Danny, when Danny was born, then we moved just after he was born in September, because he was born in August. We moved to Coulter. So your dad applied for the job of teaching there, so we were in Coulter at that time, and that was a pretty busy time for me. It's just
So you don't, spare time doesn't stick out as being something that you had.
I didn't
that was
have
a
any.
thing, not a thing.
No, it wasn't that I had some other project besides my family. I never had.
Did you sit around and feel sad about that? Do you remember doing that?
I don't. I can't remember doing that.
No point in doing that anyway.
I never had that.
Okay, you have a comment about your relationship with your spouse. I was wondering how you saw those being related, your relationship to your spouse and your affecting the training of your children.
How do you mean? Like, my relationship with him was always, I didn't have any problem with that. Maybe I can see where maybe your dad had a problem with it, but he didn't express that to me.
You weren't consciously aware of the fact that how you and your spouse related to each other might affect the training of your children. I have an opinion about that. I feel that, so I'm wondering if you noticed it, that it's how I relate to my husband had consequences in how my children related to us. Maybe that never occurred to you or was a conscious thing, but I feel that if I'm in right relationship with him, I can expect, if I'm under his authority properly, then I can expect my children to be under my authority or our authority. If we're at odds or if I'm trying to operate manually something on my own, single-handedly,
Yeah, and
then
I couldn't figure that. What I was, unless it appeared that I was not.
well, maybe you just never dealt with that issue because that wasn't.
No, because
it never came up.
I never expressed anything that I was, like, there was things that I didn't agree with that sometimes that Bill was doing, but I never didn't think it was right by God's word to even express my opinion on it in that way, because he was in charge of making the decisions for our family and making decisions for and if that wasn't right, then I was lacking in doing what I should, but I thought I was doing what God wanted in being subject to my husband in everything as unto the Lord, and that was my desire to be that way. So whether right or wrong, that was my
So that wasn't even, I understand that wasn't even something you considered. I consider it because I realized that I had issues in trying to work together with my husband. And I focused on being a mother more than I did on being a wife. So maybe I was dealing with things that never even was an issue for you.
Well, I think that Bill expected me to be giving some time to him, apart, from my family, the head of my family, and that was the thing that I sometimes found was hard, but I just wanted to do what was right, and figure that out and do it, no matter whether to balance those two things, especially when you got a little older and there was a lot of demand. And one thing I didn't manage very well was when each one of the children, you children, would want my attention, and the loudest voice would get it, whereas the quieter ones, they would want to communicate something to me, and it was just I didn't cope with that very well. I didn't deal with that very well. Shouldn't have been the loudest would be
That's
attention, but
pretty common. That's a common thing for a mother to be aware of, each one, and then her
Wanting
husband
it.
on top of that. That's
wanting attention too. Yeah. Just teach wisdom and grace, which again, I was committed to the Lord about that. I don't think I ever solved it right on my own. I didn't know what to do.
I knew how to get your attention, and that was go and work with you at something that other people didn't want to do. And there you were. I had you all to myself. That was a little thing I learned, and I noticed mine doing that with me. So when someone wanted to help me, I knew, okay, this is probably because they have something to say. It wasn't because they loved the work. You have something there about praying with your husband.
Quite a bit.
You
on
noticed
everything.
Direct results from that, or you just felt that it was something to do?
Oh no, something that's very important to do. And I was just new at that, praying with someone. And probably I didn't really, whatever he prayed for, I was in agreement of, because it was good. And but we didn't continue that when things got busy, and that's where I can see where it was, I prayed on my own, and probably Bill did too, but not together, and I don't know, I can't figure out what was the beginning of that, except what it says in the parable of Jesus about the planting the seed and the birds coming along, and this one would be cares of this life and the deceitfulness of riches and
I don't think anybody ever sees that leave. It just gradually
gradually
leaves, just like other things. So I don't know how long this can still go. My phone will go. So I'd like to be sure and get this last thing in. You have. You want to read that little paragraph that you have.
anything that is accomplished that is good, has been accomplished. This is kind of a has-been.
Mm-hmm.
Good and bears fruit for eternity in our lives and the lives of our children is what God has done, and the praise and the glory is His alone. And that I feel very strongly about that. If I'm trying to put forth myself or both of us as the reason or that was our desire. That's all I could say. But God has worked. I can see God's hand in our family, and I just attribute it to His answer to our prayers that we did desire for our family, and praise is, the glory is His, and He is still working in our family, still doing what He wants to do. It's probably what He wanted from before the foundation of the world. I believe that. Don't put any stock in what I did, except what He did in my life too.